Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the Chairman of Monmouthshire County Council.
And a very good afternoon again, officers and members, and please be seated. If we could start with apologies for absence. Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillors Lisa Dimmock, Jane Pratt, Matt Feekins and Laura Jones.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thanks, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Francis Taylor, Simon Howarth and Val Smith.
Councillor Petrini.
Councillor Martin Groker.
Do we have... Right, I've got the microphone on now. Do we have any declarations of interest at this stage? Otherwise, we'll take them as and when. Thank you. And I haven't been advised of any public questions, so I'll move straight on to Chairman's announcements and receipt of petitions. We've had no notifications of petitions, but I do have some announcements to make. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Rhys and Darren, who work at the 5 Lanes Household Waste and Recycling Centre, for their recent action in helping a woman from Caldicot who'd lost her engagement ring. They sifted through bags and bags of rubbish, went to great lengths to find the ring, which I'm delighted to announce. So I'd just like to say thank you to them on our behalf, because I know that the ring was obviously of great sentimental value. I'd also like to say well done to our emergency planning team. I don't know if members are aware, but they have recently been awarded a Gold Paw Print award by the RSPCA. Now, Monmouthshire is the only Welsh authority to win a gold accolade in this contingency planning category, and one of 5 in the UK. And congratulations to a young lady called Anna Carpanini. She's a member of our social care team who's recently received 2 awards in a Gold Dignity in Care Award, which is awarded by Care Forum Wales. So I think we'd all like to pass on our congratulations to Anna. Thank you for that. Certainly. Can I ask members just to rise and we'll have a minute's silence? Thank you. I'm sure we're all very saddened by the events, and thank you, Councillor Eason, for suggesting that. Can I ask now, Councillor Peter Fox, he's going to make a statement on behalf of County Councillor Laura Jones regarding the Armed Forces Covenant.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Laura was going to be here to do this, but sadly son is not very well today, and she's had to stay at home now this afternoon. She's asked if I would read her statement. And members, you've seen the briefing note that's been provided and given a bit of information around the approach and the current support for the armed forces community. So Laura's statement is this. So our county is home to the Royal Monmouthshire Royal Engineers Militia based in the castle in Monmouth, and is the service centre for the 1 Rifles currently based at Beachley Barracks just outside Chepstow. our council takes every opportunity to commemorate and celebrate armed forces events and recognises the contribution that veterans have made in service to their country and that which current serving personnel and their families continue to make. Each year we promote Armed Forces Day and Reservist Day, as well as marking special dates throughout the year with tributes and workplace gatherings. There are several things that we are already doing within Monmouthshire. So the guaranteed interview scheme for service leavers and spouses and reservists. As an authority, we employ many individuals from the armed forces community and understand the benefit of capitalising on military talent. The introduction of the guaranteed interview scheme will not only highlight Monmouthshire County Council as an armed forces friendly employer, but also provide additional support to those who may struggle to secure meaningful employment due to their careers and mobility. This scheme will provide this cohort with the ability to have an interview where they meet the essential criteria and have the opportunity to present themselves face to face, if necessary, face to face. Further point, the Education Support Officer, so Monmouthshire and Newport Council were successful in employing a dedicated officer whose role is to engage directly with schools and service families to ensure that they are not disadvantaged or experience any educational barriers. In conjunction with the Supporting Service Children in Education Cymru project, we have already identified over 100 service children across our schools and have supported school clusters to apply to the MOD funding to support this cohort. There's also the Employer Recognition Scheme. As members will be aware and would have read in the briefing paper, Monmouthshire County Council are currently silver award holders. I think we gained that in 2014. Through our continued commitment to work in partnership with the Armed Forces Covenant, we will be making the application for Gold Award in 2020. We will be holding a ceremony with the military representatives to reaffirm our pledge of mutual support and understanding at the next full council, that's on 5th of December, with a re-signing ceremony. Not only is this an opportunity to raise the profile of our dedication to supporting the armed forces community, but we will also be doing this jointly with our 5 town councils, with representatives from each signing up to the Armed Forces Covenant in their own right. If you'd like to know more about the Armed Forces Covenant training, it is available, and I'd encourage you to take it all up. So that was Laura's statement. So we absolutely welcome the work that has gone on and the briefing note, and we look forward, Madam Chairman, to next council meeting where we can reaffirm that commitment to our armed forces, something which we are all very passionate in this council and always have been, to support those people who have served and who continue to serve. So, Madam Chairman, that's, I just move that briefing and Laura's statement.
Thank you, Councillor Fox. So we look forward to that happening now at the next full council meeting, the re-signing of the covenant. We now move on to item 5, report of the Chief Officer for Enterprise, reappointment of the Monmouthshire Local Access Forum. I understand Councillor John is going to introduce that for us.
Thank you very much. Under the Countryside and Rights of Way Act 2000, we're required to maintain a local access forum, which is a statutory body set up to provide advice to the local authority and to other agencies, including Natural Resources Wales, on the improvement of public access to land for open-air recreation. We have a statutory duty to pay due regard to any relevant advice given by the local access forum. The forum is required to meet at least twice a year, although it usually meets more frequently than that. In the last year, the forum has assisted in the review of the Rights of Way Improvement Plan. The forum is made up of between 12 and 22 members, including one representative of the County Council, a role ably undertaken by Councillor Anne Webb, and I propose that Councillor Webb continues in this role. The regulations permit members to continue for 3 years from the first meeting of each term, so all members are now due for reappointment. We're required to achieve a balanced membership, reflecting the interests of owners and occupiers of access land, as well as those who access public land, together with due regard to a fair balance of protected characteristics. It's recommended that 7 former Local Access Forum members be reappointed, and they're listed in the report. It's further recommended that Sylvia Fowles, who's attended the current Local Access Forum as an observer, is also appointed. I also recommend that 6 new applicants be shortlisted for appointment, with the final selection to be delegated to a nominated panel comprising of 3 appropriate members of this council. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank retiring members for their contribution to the work of the Local Access Forum. So today I ask members for their approval for this appointment process for this important body. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor John. Do we have a seconder? Second. Councillor Fox. Any comments or questions from members? We're happy to go to the vote. Councillor Eason.
Oh, yes, thank you, Chair. We are to appoint 3 county councillors to stand on the committee. What is the process for that, please?
Councillor John, the 3 selection members.
I suggest we do that through liaison through the party leaders, ensuring party political balance.
Thank you very much. So would members like to vote on that now? Oh, sorry, Councillor Petroni.
Well, just to make things even. First, loving the husky voice, Councillor John. The Labour group would like to put Martin Groke up, so if the leader make a note of that.
Councillor Fox?
Yeah, I would assume in political balance probably be 2-1 on a 3. So Richard will inform the Democratic Services of our 2 names shortly.
Thank you very much. Shall we proceed with the vote? All those in favour? Thank you, members. That was unanimous. So the next item is 6.1, remit of the Public Service Board Select Committee, which is going to be introduced by Councillor Paul Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The reason that this report is being brought forward is to request a change to the title of the terms of reference of the Public Service Board Select Committee and seek agreement to amend the Constitution accordingly. The reason for the proposed changes to the title and terms of reference is to broaden the committee's existing remit to allow scrutiny of wider public service provision and, where powers allow, to provide accountability for services delivered in collaboration or by external partners. The benefits are that there will be an enhanced governance arrangement by providing a clear mechanism to hold strategic partnerships and collaborations to account, greater flexibility for select committees to scrutinise services that do not fit neatly within other select committees. There do not appear to be any disadvantages envisaged. There's capacity within the select committee and there's a desire to enhance its role. There are a couple of things that I would draw your attention to. And that there's no direct resource implication, nor any negative impact for equalities, future generations, social justice, safeguarding, or corporate parenting. The proposal has been approved by the PSB Select Committee and Democratic Services Committee. In line with the Future Generations Act 2015, the Select Committee would continue to provide overview and accountability for the Public Service Board. There are no formal powers to obligate partners other than the PSB to attend scrutiny meetings. However, they are able to draw upon the Local Government Act 2000 parameters to scrutinise and enable those scrutinisers to deal with issues that affect residents. The specific changes are outlined in paragraphs 2.2 and 2.3 of the report, and I'd ask this Council to endorse the same.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Murphy. Do we have any other comments or questions from members? Okay, shall we proceed to the vote? All those in favour? Thank you, members. That was unanimous. Item 6.2, Climate Emergency Strategy. Councillor Fox.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Jane would have ideally been here to present this, and I'll be reading a statement from her as well in a short while, as she's attending a leadership academy course that she's been on for some while, so she can't be here, but that she'll explain that further in the statement. But basically, members, you'll know that back in May we moved the motion to declare a climate emergency. And since then, a lot of work's been going on to put in place a strategy and an emerging action plan, evolving action plan, which we can take forward some of those things which are really important to us. And they are highlighted very clearly in 3.7. And you can see where we've already been doing an awful lot on this agenda in 3.3. But, Madam Chair, if you'll permit me, it's Jane's report, and it's only fair that she can say what she wanted to do with this. So I'll just pick it up. There we go. So, yeah, from Jane. Firstly, this is Jane speaking. Firstly, can I apologise that due to my attendance at the Welsh Government Senior Leadership course in North Wales that I am unable to be with you today. I would like to thank all officers across the Council for the hard work they have put into this paper under the direction of Matt Gatehouse and Hazel Clapworthy since the Climate Emergency Declaration was made by this Council in May. This is by no means a finished document, as it states in 3.9, but remains a flexible document to which further actions and information can be added. As the report states, we will require further resources to implement greater change across our county if we are able to achieve our target by 2030. I attended the first climate change conference held in Cardiff City Hall along with our Chief Executive, who was a key speaker, and also Matt Gatehouse and Hazel Clapworthy. The Welsh Government were the first to declare a climate emergency in the world, but I was disappointed that neither in the speech by the First Minister or the one made by his Minister for Environment, Energy and Rural Affairs was there any detail as to how they would support local government to deliver our objectives and reach our carbon zero target by 2030. The only pledge Welsh Government made was one of involvement and collaboration. Jane goes on that I asked at the workshop at the conference why, if you travel from South Wales to North Wales, there is a complete lack of fast electric charging points for electric vehicles. People travelling from the south to the North Wales are forced to cross the border into England to utilise the facilities on the M5, M6 and M56. But Welsh electric vehicle drivers would rather spend their cash in Wales. So it's time that Wales Government acted and got this done. As a council, we started this journey 10 or 15 years ago, and we are going to build on this base. We have a radical approach at MCC, but we now need to accelerate the change in the face of the scale of the emergency. We are well placed to work with our communities to deliver the change that is required to reach our zero carbon target, and our agenda must be focused and relentless. Welsh Government needs to support the changes required, and I hope we will have more direction from them very soon because time is not on our side. We would need to ensure that we have a future workforce with the right education and skills for the transition into green jobs and incentive schemes to drive the right behaviours, for example, plastic and can recycling stations in every supermarket and shop. This will also stop the littering of our streets and highways. We need sustainable economic growth for the future, and our response to climate change must be our first focus in everything we do. The climate emergency goes far beyond party politics, and we all need to work together to get this done. I have been very encouraged by the way officers pulled together over the summer to get this paper prepared. This paper sets out 10 key objectives within the strategy, and I hope Council will approve these today. The action plan, which is the appendix, will be a blueprint for the attention of the working group, who will identify and plan how the Council achieves its objectives and which ones are tackled first within the budgetary constraints of the Council. It is unlikely that we will be able to deliver on all of these ideas, and the list is not exhaustive. But it will be for the working group to identify the actions which we will deliver the highest impact and keep abreast of technology and developments as they occur. I hope Council will support this paper, and with your agreement, I look forward to the formation of the member-led working group so that we can get on with the task in hand. Please do not hesitate to contact me on my return if you wish to discuss further. So, Madam Chairman, that was Jane's statement, so clearly that would lead us to the recommendations in the report, and at 2.1 it says that the Council approve the 10 objectives within the plan listed in paragraph 3.7, which cover the areas of activity that the Council will need to focus on to achieve its goal of reducing carbon emissions to net zero by 2030, and in 2.2 that the Council endorses the action plan, which will be an evolving document as new technologies develop and other opportunities arise. And finally, 2.3, that a member-led working group is created to accelerate progress and take responsibility for ensuring the action plan continues to evolve and be shaped by emerging evidence and cutting-edge practice and opportunities. And Madam Chairman, I move those recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Fox. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Murphy. Thank you. Councillor Tudor-Thomas.
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, we as a group applaud the work of MCC and obviously particularly of the officers who've done such a good job of writing this document, and quite a difficult document to write. But just a couple of points, really, that obviously council emissions are something like 26,700 tonnes per year, whereas the whole county pushes out 650,000 tonnes throughout the year. And we feel that there should be a greater involvement of people within the county, perhaps the setting up of citizens' assemblies, of bringing groups together who are then informed about climate mitigation and to actually prepare the public on the options on behaviour to dramatically reduce the whole county's emissions to net zero by 2030. The blind spot in this document, we think, is much like that of the replacement LDP in the county, is the likely changes in agriculture in the county in the light of future local food procurement facilities necessary for a zero carbon and balanced biodiversity perspective is missing. Obviously, agriculture consumes most of the county's land mass, and to ignore that and what's going to happen to agriculture in the future is obviously quite troubling. There's no mention of MCC's role as a planning authority, and I think that is quite crucial. There's not a word about the replacement LDP and the opportunity that that presents on how they might use planning powers to encourage or even insist on zero carbon housing developments and other developments, including things like extensions and improvements on houses. No mention on the work of planners, conservation officers, what they can do to encourage and facilitate the installation of renewables by the setting of examples and making the planning process a lot easier to encourage residents to install renewable power sources in residential developments. We support option 2. There are structural questions about who and how things from the community and within MCC are involved to debate ways forward for a county-wide carbon reduction. The big question is, how can this conversation be facilitated? And I assume, obviously, MCC will have a big play in that. There is a need for, as I said, county-wide citizen assemblies, agreed actions, some of which will demand Welsh Government action, and some, obviously, from MCC. And some will be, obviously, corporate, institutional, but finally individual members of the public will actually need to be involved in public action. The county council emissions, small suggestion that the whole sort of county picture should be the focus of action, facilitated by MCC. If we are to make a serious dent in emissions, it's got to be the authority and the whole county, and not just the authority. Perhaps MCC could give a lead, but not actually control citizens' assemblies in the decision-making process. Also, to enact county-wide debate on the need for possibly an expert sort of facilitator officer perhaps on a part-time basis to start with, to really affect MCC action on its own assets and its own procurement processes in terms of vehicles and energy generally, and then to elect and to run with the County Council in a wider action. So I put forward an amendment, particularly on option 2, which involves MCC and the wider community, and my amendment is to include an input from planning and highlighting climate emission in the LDP and involve discussion with the general public in MCC about climate issues. Thanks.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Greenland.
Thank
We are now, just to clarify, we're now debating the amendment put forward by Councillor Thomas.
And I'm just actually going back to the Cabinet meeting of the 3rd of July, where we brought forward an additional report, which was as a result of our passing the climate change and issues. And, sorry, I'm just trying to find, here we are. And what we said is that we will, in the formation of the LDP, take issues into account. However, it would be wrong until the LDP is decided and agreed by us to specify that. But I would particularly point you to Objective 17 in our LDP proposals. And just to read it out, to strive to limit the increase in global temperatures to 1.5 degrees, supporting carbon reduction through a variety of measures, including the use of renewable energy, the design and location of new development, encouraging balanced job and population growth to reduce out-commuting, the provision of broadband connectivity to reduce the need to travel, the provision of ultra-low emission vehicle charging infrastructure to reduce emissions and improve air quality, and the provision of quality green infrastructure. And it does quite clearly point to the fact that as we move forward, we will in the LDP be looking at the issues of climate change and be proposing that we incorporate those within the structure. So I think actually, Madam Chair, there is no need for the amendment that's been put, because quite clearly we have already agreed that that will be part of the LDP going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Fox.
Yeah, on the amendment, thanks for Bob for bringing back to our attention. We can sometimes forget some of the things we've done here, and one of the pledges we made in that when we moved that motion, wasn't it, to look at all of our policies and amend those accordingly in line with that motion we made. I think what the recommendations give us here is flexibility through that member-led working group, and that's the group for you to be part of. And to shape as you see fit and to monitor as you go along. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that group making some, as they discuss things and evolve that they may want to do and add other things and invite people. I don't know what shape it could take, Tudor, but I'm sure there are groups out there who will be looking forward to getting involved with us and get close to us, and I know Jane will be looking forward to working closely with those in line with our commitment in our motion to support the climate emergency. So, Madam Chairman, I think I'm with Bob on this, especially with the clarity he's just put around LDP, that there is no real necessity to amend 2.2, but if there are further developments we want to do and things to shape, that's best to be done via the member-led working group.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else who wishes to speak on the amendment? We will put that to the vote then. Do we wish to read out the additional line that recommendation that Councillor Thomas has proposed before we vote on it?
Okay. An amendment to option 2 to include an input from planning on highlighting climate emissions in the LDP and involve discussion with the general public in Monmouthshire, within Monmouthshire County Council.
Chair, may I?
Thank you.
Can I suggest that, as I've already shown that it's already in that Tudor might like to withdraw that, as there's clearly no necessity for it, as it's already in there.
Councillor Thomas? No.
I think it's such an important issue. I do think it needs to be highlighted, and particularly the fact that it should be the involvement with the general public, because they are the main, let's be honest, the authority can do some things like having, green lorry, electric lorries, etc., and vans and cars, but it is Joe Public who obviously, they are the main ones who are going to pollute this authority. So I do think, with respect, and I note Councillor Greenland's point, but with respect, I think it's this involvement, particularly with the general public, but also I think highlighting it in the LDP, that, that is the local development plan. We are talking about the future and development. So, I beg to disagree.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. You've clarified that, so we will go straight to the vote now. All those in favour of the additional recommendation? Thank you. All those against including the additional recommendation? The amendment is lost, so we'll now go back to the original recommendations. Councillor Batruni?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was interesting to see that the Conservatives and the Liberal leader don't want the public involved in shaping the future and how we shape our climate change strategy, which is explicit in the amendment. 2 points first on the strategy itself. 3.2. We had a huge debate, and the motion that this council will ensure, no, actually the Conservatives and the Liberals wanted only strive. It was the Labour group who wanted ensure. Could that be amended? Because it's correct in the actual strategy itself, it puts strive. But it says here ensure. We're not ensuring, we're striving. Could that be changed? I'd be very grateful. Page on the strategy itself, page 14, I believe. Farmers is misspelled. I think it says famers or something to akin. Just the little bugbear of mine. If that could be amended, that'd be great as well. On the strategy itself, I'll start with the positives. We have a strategy, progress, and I like particularly the end of the strategy, which is talking about particular actions and the feasibility of those actions. It's nice to have a strategy with action points in it. That's refreshing. So I really do applaud the officers for their work and for their diligence on this. I want to raise 2 or 3 things in relation to it, though. There's lack of detail around money and actually delivering any of this. And it's, again, I noted the leader's words, it's kind of this amorphous, vague, moving beast where you can't really pin anything down. You can't hold them to account. You can't say, what are you going to deliver? Oh, it could change. We could drop it. We could add it. We might not. Which is not very good to scrutinise if you're trying to do your job as the opposition, when you just make documents that can be dropped and changed at any moment. So I would make that point. But for example, on finances, we talk about cycle paths increasing. Well, totally agree. Complete, I would imagine, cross-party agreement on that. But when we put a motion down to get some money to put a cycle path between only Roggett and Mega, the response was basically we haven't got the cash. Fair enough if we haven't got the cash, but why are we having it as a target here when we're not even willing to put money in on the smallest of cycle routes between 2 villages where tragically someone passed away when they hit off their bike? So, one of the good things we can do, but we're not willing to put the finances down in it. In the finances section says that they will have to have some money, but we're not sure how much or if we're going to put any in. So I would like further clarity on that. The second thing is some of the proposals, some of the initial actions, I will ask the working group to really be conscious of this, and its effect on poorer people in the county. And this is one of my little bugbears about how we put inadvertently barriers to in-work poverty, people who are working hard but struggling away, and people who are just plain out poor in Monmouthshire. For example, we're going to incentivise moving people to electric vehicles. On the surface of it, that is great. If you're on a budget and can't afford to migrate to an electric vehicle, that just means you're being financially penalised for your inability to purchase that new car. So poorer people will be penalised, while middle-class people like me will benefit financially from getting in my electric car, driving along, not paying a car parking, but someone on a budget won't be able to do it, and they'll have to pay for their car parking. And we know from research upon research, if you want people to shop locally, it is always the poorest in any geographical area that spend it locally. It's people like people who are middle class, and I'm not demeaning that, who go out of county. We use our cars and we go out. People who have less financial income tend to shop local. There's so much research on that, yet we're disincentivizing them to do that. So just have a think around some of these things. Mileage for staff, that we were going to increase mileage for staff if they use an electric vehicle. Great if you're a staff member on 100 grand. If you're a staff member or cleaner on minimum wage or whatever, the living wage, that's a harder thing to deliver. And it just requires a bit more forethought about its effects and the barriers we put on working and poor people in Monmouthshire, where we haven't had this joined-up thinking again around these effects. Good intentions, but barriers to people who are trying to make ends meet. And the other thing about local shopping, and it sounds lovely, and I do love it, and local produce, I love a £5 jam like the next man. But if you're on a budget, you do not go to £5 jams. You do not go to local food markets because you're outpriced. You go to your other supermarkets, I'm not going to name other supermarkets are all available, where it's cheaper. And if you're on a budget, you can afford them and it sticks to your family and you can get food for your family. If you go into a farmer's market, it is budget dependent. So you're struggling to afford these items. So we've got to be careful around that. And I've said that in the social justice group as well. We've got to be really careful around local produce, produced locally, that tends to be hyperinflated. There's a reason why supermarkets do well. They keep the costs down. And so people on budgets will be impacted. So please, 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 whoever go on the working-led group, can you be conscious of these effects on these inadvertent barriers? Good intentions, I appreciate that, but be mindful of those things. And can we please ensure to strive? We're only striving.
Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Listening to Dimitri's remarks there, I do have some sympathy with what he says about targeting car parking prices. And, you know, a couple of years ago, I remember speaking in a debate about, I think it came from the then leader of the Liberal group, about charging staff to park at County Hall as a way of encouraging more sustainable modes of transport. And of course the argument I had then is that once you've paid that charge, there is no incentive whatsoever to find a sustainable means of transport. It's certainly a difficult one, and again I have some sympathy with his comments about the cost of local food, but I don't have very much sympathy with cheap food in supermarkets if it involves two steaks that have come all the way from Brazil on land that used to be rainforest. So I think there's a balance to be created. But I have three specific points I want to make of my own. And the first one's in the action plan, page 60, the tree planting, 10,000 trees. I wondered if there are any sites identified for that. And as a member of the Woodland Trust, I wonder if that's something that could be done in association with that body. Page 64, greener vehicles, electricity production. I'd like to know a little bit more about electric vehicles and if we could be signposted to where we might find that. And what I mean by that is I'm not convinced, or I don't have the information to be convinced, that electric vehicles are the way to go presently in terms of security of supply of electricity, how how damaging electricity production is and how much more efficient it is compared with petrol, and the issue of battery waste and battery production. You know, batteries are pretty horrible things. They've got some noxious chemicals in them. They may come from countries where environmental protection isn't quite so strong. And what do you do with them once they're kaput? And the third point then is, and it's just a small one, but on page 65 we're encouraging people to travel more sustainably. And the one thing I note, and it's become a bugbear, is the state of our bus stops. And I know a couple of years ago funding was removed to have them cleaned, but some of them are absolutely humping. They're green. I mean, the last time the stops in my ward got clean was when I took a bucket and did them myself, and they were absolutely filthy. And no wonder we can't encourage people to do that across the rural county if the stops themselves are overgrown, they're filthy, they've got waste stuff smeared up them, they're disgusting. So please, could we have a look at some way of introducing a cleaning programme into that? Thank you.
Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would also like to thank officers for moving so quickly on preparing this document. When I brought forward the motion to council, people did ask me to put a time limit on it, and I rejected that as an option because I wanted to give officers the opportunity to do it justice. And I have to say they've moved it in a timescale that I wasn't expecting. So thank you very much to officers for working so hard through the summer over that. I also really welcome the member-led working group, and I would like to ask a question about that to ensure that we will have sufficient members. So I already know that because I am the leader of the smallest group in this council, that sometimes the Liberal Democrats don't get a seat on that group. We would certainly like to have a seat on this group, please. In terms of some of the other aspects, I would probably like to direct the Labour group to page 8 of the document, which refers to Monmouthshire Community Climate Champions. If you would like further information about this community-led climate group, which Monmouthshire Council has been engaging with very heavily, I'm sure you can speak to Hazel, who's sitting at the front, who has also been working very closely. We already have been engaging with our residents in Monmouthshire. They have been involved all through the summer long. And certainly residents frequently get in contact with me via various forms of social media to let me know things that concern them about our policies and how we're going to move forwards in terms of the climate emergency. I'd also like to thank the Planning Department, who moved so rapidly to put things into the LDP document, and again thank them for letting me know because they knew it was an area of concern to me. So there are reasons why I didn't vote along with the amendment, and that is because, frankly, I already knew it had already was in hand. However, things directly relating to the document. Giles has already brought up the issue of the 10,000 trees and the Woodland Trust. I was also going to recommend that that move forwards. I think it's a very useful collaboration. They offer quite a great deal of funding, so we should really explore that further. I was also delighted to have raised with me just in the last 2 weeks the fair share schemes that are being run by our supermarkets. I was actually at Roggett Community Cafe, and they were letting me know about Caldecott's fair share scheme that is run with Waitrose, and how much possibility there is to do so much more with it, and thinking that this would be a great way for Monmouthshire officers who have a much greater knowledge of community groups to work out within our communities to find better ways of making those links between our community groups and the businesses that are already in our communities to do things like reduce food wastage. And I really would like to encourage that as a possibility for working forwards. One area that I feel quite strongly about is an area where we can get our own house in order. And it has been raised with me several times now by members of the public that we have an issue with our buses, in particular our school buses, and them leaving their engines turned on whilst waiting outside schools. They can be easily waiting for 15 minutes outside our comprehensive schools. I've had it flagged up in Chepstow and in Caldecott. And I'd really like us to actually make sure our own drivers know that they are meant to turn their engines off. We have significant air pollution issues, especially in the Chepstow area, and there is no need for any of us to be breathing excessive diesel fuels. So maybe the Cabinet Member for Education could take that up to make sure our school buses don't actually involve in vehicle idling outside of our schools. I'd also really like to ask that we as a council put pressure on Welsh Government and also national government about the infrastructure needed in the national grid. I note that we said that we would be interested in doing more solar farm development, potentially, when the infrastructure is in place. And when I was at Welsh Assembly and I spoke at the Extinction Rebellion organised event there, and we talked amongst all the other councils in the South Wales area, one of the issues that they said was grid infrastructure was stopping them from being able to do more sustainable renewable developments for electricity generation as part of those councils. This is a thing that we as a council can't fix ourselves, but we can put pressure up the chain. I know it's something that I've always been really enthusiastic about, that we have solar farms in Monmouthshire, which are owned by the council. And I think that's wonderful, and it's a great way that we can step forward. But we need the infrastructure put in place from the grid. So it's where we have to pass it up the chain and try and put pressure on from the top. And then the last aspect that I'd like to comment on is on page 19, and that's the idea that we could improve infrastructure in the railways. And again, it's passing it up with the South Wales Metro. We really do need to improve our rail system and the access to rail for all of our residents. And the only way we can do that is by continuing to apply pressure to make sure that people really do understand how important our rail links are into the county. But thank you very much to all the officers who've worked so very hard on this document. I think it's a great start, and I look forward to working with you on it in future.
Thank you. Councillor Watts.
Yes, I guess my only concern about is our reliance, this authority especially, the reliance on tech, and we kind of pride ourselves with being innovators. And there's always lots of discussion, certainly when I was on economy development, about advancement, technology, the future, what it might look like. But the electric vehicles, for example, you know, we can only be as good as the tech and the technology. So Tesla, for example, innovators, head of the game. But I remember reading a story recently where a police authority in America had to call off a high-speed chase because they'd run out of power on it. Now, we're obviously not the police, but what I'm saying is our technology, we have to meet the needs of the people that we serve, and maybe that should be kind of leveled out with the advancement of the technology. We shouldn't be too quick to invest in vehicles, for example, buses, until we know it can deliver what we need it to deliver. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Fox for his right of reply?
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Clearly, there's lots of good views and ideas and experience in here, so I'm sure you're going to embrace the member-led working group and all that it can do. So I encourage you to take part. Some really good points made. Dimitri, your points are solid. And I hope the working group will make sure that it's mindful of the effects of some of the points. You put them very well, and I absolutely can align to that. The one thing I will, in 3.2, I do recognise that this is the motion as was put. We did amend the motion. Dimitri pointed it out. We moved to ensure this council will ensure that it reduces its own carbon emissions or something around that. We strive to. Sorry, we changed that. So that needs to be changed. But in the recommendation that in 2.3 that the member-led working group is created to accelerate progress and take responsibility for ensuring the action plan continues to evolve is right, and that's appropriate. That's what I thought you were meaning the motion. Yeah, no, that's fine. So, Madam Chairman, I can't respond to all of those points. I don't know if officers wanted to respond to any of the questions put, but I think it's real good food for the working group. It just shows how much passion there is for this agenda and how much we can do and how much has already been done. And can I offer my thanks to all the officers and the work that you've all done so far in forwarding this agenda. It is an important agenda for this council and will remain so for many decades. So, you know, it is important we get the foundations right and build on it as we can afford. The resources are going to be an issue. Many of you will know, and you'll certainly know when we come to budget this next time, how very, very, very tight and difficult it is. But however, that shouldn't stop us from doing all we can. And I think what Jane was frustration in her opening was her note was that that whilst there is a commitment across Wales for this, what we haven't seen yet are the resources put forward to get behind to help us achieve the Wales Government target, which we've embraced and signing up to. So, you know, there is a need for us to put pressure on governments to make sure they can give us the tools. We'll do what we can within the resources we have and do the best we can, but if we want to push the boundaries further and further and do some of the bigger things, this needs an all-Wales approach, and we look forward to that. So, Madam Chairman, I move the recommendations in 3, but could I ask that in 3.2 that we do acknowledge that the motion was amended as pointed out by Dimitri.
Thank you, Councillor Fox, and thank you, members, for all your contributions to this very important strategy. So can I ask for your votes now, please, for acceptance of the recommendations in the report? Thank you very much. I'm pleased to say that was unanimous. So we're now on item 7, report of the Chief Officer for Social Care, Safeguarding and Health, and 7.1, Modern Day Slavery and Exploitation Protocol. Councillor Sarah Jones is going to introduce to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So the Modern Day Slavery Act has shone a very much needed spotlight on the issue of modern slavery and human trafficking when it was introduced by the UK government just over 4 years ago and written into law. And today I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to bring forward to you the work that we're doing here in Monmouthshire on this extremely important issue, and the protocol that we have adopted, which takes forward the role that we can play as a public body and as our role as a first responder. So the document that you have presented for you today has been adopted and amended in light of the work of the Strong Communities Select Committee, and I want to thank all the members that have been involved in that piece of work, particularly Lisa and Jane, who've helped drive this forward as chairs of that committee. The approach that you'll see in this document that we've taken is about providing greater consistency in terms of our duty as first responders. It's about highlighting the role of training, how we can identify cases and how we can make referrals ourselves, either as counsellors or as officers of this organisation. And I welcome the opportunity myself to be designated as the modern day slavery champion for this authority, and that's alongside the existing designated safeguarding leads that we have. Training will be available to members, and I strongly urge that you all engage in this when you have the opportunity to do so. So I believe that this protocol that we have today is a really important step forward in helping to protect those highly vulnerable members of our society, and I commend the approach to you. I want to hand over to Diane and Dave, who've done all the hard work on this and have been instrumental in leading it forward, to give you a bit more on the detail and what it actually means in practice. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to raise awareness today on this really important piece of work.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councillor Jones and councillors. Only 4 slides, you'll be pleased to know. So the purpose of this is not to give you a detailed presentation. We did do a member session in April, as per the covering report, so that's there already in terms of the numbers. What we will pick up is just that issue around awareness and next steps going forward. Clearly it's important. Obviously, Councillor Eason mentioned earlier the 39 poor souls in Essex. So clearly that's human trafficking, and that's very tragic. Does it apply to us? Yes, it does in rural areas. So what we want to do is just pick up a couple of the key points without getting into great detail. The other thing to point out is it's also supplemented by the LGA councillor guide that was circulated last week. So that again talks about the role of local authorities in terms of modern day slavery specifically. So that's what we'll pick up. Down one, up one. This one. So in terms of the why, literally just going to pick through some of these issues. Modern Day Slavery Act 2015, that's been a very fundamental piece of legislation, so it was dealt with prior to that, but what you will find is those cases against perpetrators have probably doubled in terms of custodial sentences, so that's obviously positive in terms of those people that obviously carrying out these crimes. Second one is about officers and members need to recognise and know how to respond and how to refer to specialist support and advice. Like I say, it's not purely a city issue. We've certainly, within environmental health, dealt with cases with the police at takeaways. That's actually within Monmouthshire. I think the case probably that hit the national headlines was one in Jersey Marine, near Swansea, a scrap metal dealer. So I don't know if you remember that one, where it was a father and a son. The Bakers, Baker Senior got 10 years, Baker Junior got 6 years, and that was a homeless young individual, 18 years old, learning difficulties, picked up off the street, and he was held as a slave for over 2 years in horrendous conditions. So they kept him in those conditions by physical violence. So even when he was admitted to hospital with severe beatings, he was too petrified to tell them the story. So eventually, thankfully, interventions went into place. Perpetrators got, obviously, custodial sentences, as I say, and the victim was thereafter protected. So it's an horrendous thing that clearly we need to address. The whole purpose of the protocol is for consistency, which is the third point. So we have developed that process and practice with partners across Gwent. Clearly, we got child sexual exploitation covered with our colleagues and recognises that exploitation of both children and adults needs a unified response. So we just need to be clear that as and when it happens, people know what to do, exactly what to do in those circumstances. So we do need that coordinated approach. That's what the protocol provides, and that's attached in the papers. And that will ensure the appropriate protection of children and adults, help disrupt location of antisocial activity, supported by the police and criminal investigation. Again, if you think nationally, some of them have stemmed from worker exploitation. So you might think, what's Dave Jones doing sat here? Clearly it's social services and safeguarding. Well, clearly, as many of you will know, environmental health officers, trained standards officers, licensing officers spend their working day in takeaways, in nail bars, farms, private sector housing. These are the very places where you could find potential victims. So our role is very much about disrupting and identifying those individuals and working with the police. So that's why I think it's quite healthy, perhaps from a Monmouthshire perspective, we've included others, that not the usual suspects. So if I hand over to Diane, she'll pick up the next 2 slides.
Thank you. Sorry. What we thought was really important was clarity of language, that people really understood what we meant by trafficking, that trafficking quite often is perceived as, such as the case with the 39 people, Chinese people in the lorry yesterday, but actually trafficking can mean the movement of a child or a young person from one house to another for purposes of exploitation or sexual grooming. So it's important that we understand as an authority exactly what we're talking about when we talk about trafficking, when we talk about exploitation. So the protocol has gone some ways to explaining what we mean by that. Furthermore, as we've said, it's important that we have very clear processes and practices, because we do need to identify, not just identify it while people are out and about, but know how to respond to it. There's a very clear Home Office process in order to be able to access specialist support for vulnerable adults and vulnerable young people, which would give them specific expertise and funding for their support. This is done via a national referral mechanism. If we don't get it right as social services or those wider services, there is only one opportunity. So it's really important that we do have a coordinated impact. We have the right training and we have that wider support from the Gwent police specialist agencies to be able to support workers in making those one-time referrals in order to access support. Because obviously as a council, we can't, and the social services department, we cannot offer the specific support that people need. We're very strong in this authority in regards to our response to child sexual exploitation, and we always have. But wider on the Gwent and national arena, in regards to the police and wider agencies, is the exploitation of young people and vulnerable adults, particularly in regards to county lines, in regards to drug management, drug dealing, cuckooing, where houses are taken over, benefits are taken over, to give people from outside Monmouthshire, but also within Monmouthshire, a place to deal from and exploit people to make an extreme amount of money. So it's really important that we know what we're doing, how to identify it, and what the appropriate response should be. And that was the purpose of the protocol. We've just undertaken our safe audit, our self-assessment of our safeguarding right across the authority. That's identified our designated safeguarding leads and deputy designated safeguarding leads. So when we talk about champions for safeguarding and champions for modern day slavery, those two things go really well together. So when we're looking at those and we're looking at training, we will be looking to our modern day slavery champions, and that will include our team managers and senior practitioners in our operational safeguarding teams in both adults and children. We've enlisted and joined up with the Wales Anti-Slavery Group. We've got fantastic support and advice from the Gwent Police for Modern Day Slavery team. We've got really great links now with modern organised crime, Monmouthshire organised crime groups, the Safer Monmouthshire group, the Criminal and Antisocial Behaviour group. And from that, we've organised a Monmouthshire exploitation group. So what we're doing is joining everybody up, sharing intelligence, sharing processes, making sure we're all on the same page, and really having an understanding of what exploitation looks like and how often we find it in Monmouthshire. In relation to training, thank you. We already offer corporate induction. We already offer safeguarding training. There's going to be a basic awareness training in that. We're in the moment almost at developing a video. I don't know if the council has seen before the safeguarding video that we undertook here, which is on YouTube, but which is also used in the corporate training, which is very clear about Monmouthshire's position on the safeguarding of adults and children. We've had one that's specific now, should be launched soon, in regards to modern day slavery and exploitation. The idea of that will also be that it'll go out to all areas of the authority. All of our staff will see that, and so they will have something to recognise and understand in order to go and access their modern day slavery champions. The training of designated safeguarding leads and champions I've talked about, but as you can see, there's a link then to all our staff. Training for elected members you've already spoken about, and of course, modern day slavery champions. Training for the managers, senior practitioners, children of adult services, and we've got a specialist programme. It will be part of our level 1 and our level 2 children and adult safeguarding training, but also it will be a specialist training for our operational teams. And as I said, we've got support for the National Referral Mechanism specialist training being provided by the Modern Day Slavery and Trafficking Coordination Team at Gwent Police. So what we really were hoping to do is have a place where we could know what it was we were looking for, have somewhere for our staff members to go and ask for advice. We had somewhere for our specialist leads to go and get specific advice about this complex area, and that we're making our responses right in order to be able to access appropriate support from the Home Office and specialist agencies on that one-time only offer. And also that we've got some idea of what it looks like in Monmouthshire, so we can report about the incidents and how prevalent it is, really.
Just quickly to add as well, I think it came through select committee as well that members are particularly keen on county lines training. That's a particular national issue, isn't it? So we can link that up as well. So John McConaughey's working on that briefing, if you like, a sort of short, snappy. What are the issues around modern day slavery? He's working on that now. So that should be ready imminently. and I'll be backed up with the county line training specifically for members as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very helpful. This is for information, and I appreciate the Cabinet member brought it to us for that purpose, but some members have indicated they wish to comment, so we'll start with Councillor Watts.
If I may, Chair, it was just a few kind of questions about the financial implications. I think it was 10 years ago, Dave, when a lorry load of Afghan children turned up in Thornwell, and I remember the response was wholly impressive and very humbling. It was an education to me to see then the quick action of our own social services in dealing with those very, very vulnerable children. And it was very difficult as well. I remember there was a very controversial issue, some very inappropriate comments as well in the paper about, in media, about how old some of those children were and identifying their age. But we dealt with it, and I believe that we dealt with it appropriately, quickly and sufficiently. But what I do recall is there was a financial implication. So we have a duty, this is my awareness, to ensure that those children are put into specific care and those needs are met. But we can't necessarily provide that care in county, so we incur then a cost by moving them to specialist agencies that can deal with it. And we then had to retrospectively pursue that money. I think it took 12 months then from the Home Office, and I'm not entirely sure if that's improved. The broader issues then are about your skills as well. I often worry about, and I know you're totally skilled up and you're obviously tuned into it, and it makes me feel that I can sleep at night, really. When I worry, I do genuinely worry about those things. It's an issue that we talk about, certainly in my family, quite a bit. But where I'm going with this is, do you believe that you've got the resources, the financial resources from the Cabinet to ensure that we are dealing with it, whether it's county lines, whether it's human trafficking, which is becoming more prevalent? And then my final question is about the language skills, because if you're then trying to identify, if we then become a one-stop place as councillors, where people, I guess, can tell us really what their problems are, how are we supposed to back that up if we haven't got the language skills that those people don't have themselves? So if they're Slovakian, or if they're Czech, or whatever they are, where do they go?
I think, in response to that, I think one of our best opportunities is that this is now on a national and a Gwent-wide basis. There's huge activity across partnerships with the police specifically, but across all partnerships in managing this across Gwent and across Wales. The Home Office, that's part of why we've been asked to make a protocol, because we are first responders. That's why I talk about the national referral mechanism. We have this one opportunity. Things move very, very quickly. That's why we have to get specialist advice as how we refer to people, so we can have the specialism that we aren't necessarily paying for. That will come from the Home Office. We don't have the skills in order to support people trafficked from abroad. They do need special language skills. It's a very complex minefield for adults and young people who are trafficked from abroad. But I will say that within those Monmouthshire issues, which are about county lines, which are about child sexual exploitation of our young people, which is about the exploitation of our vulnerable older people for money or property, those are being managed within our safeguarding teams as part of our core business. So the money comes basically from outside, the skill set comes from outside, and we are supported on a Gwent and Wales-wide basis. I will say that Monmouthshire has probably been more proactive than most of our other local boroughs, and they're looking to our protocol in order to develop their own work and to make sure they've got a joined-up approach.
Sorry, just to press the point. So, again, my final point is, if that you, say, for example, you have links with a care home, say 70%, 50% of those people are working, the European citizens, and they've come in here. They could be, we don't know, sometimes they are, sometimes they're treated very, very fairly and well, but they could be exploited. You don't know whether they are or not. And I guess what I'm hoping for is really as members, and we're talking about training, that we, as elected members, up our game as well, so we can have those links with our community and identify where those people are exploited. I think that's part of our role as well. I'm passionate about it because people do get exploited. And it's happening now, it's happening today, and it's simply wrong, it's inhumane. So what are we doing then to up our skills? What are you going to do to help us up our skills as elected members?
I think what's important here is that actually this approach that we're bringing forward is about upskilling everybody. So elected members, read the protocol, go on the training, make sure that you're armed with the information that is required. And in effect, I think what Diane and Dave are bringing to us is that this protocol that's been developed is a really, really good start at saying if we're skilled and aware, we then pass that information on, and that's the ask here. It isn't actually saying that we all need to be experts in this, but we need to be aware and hyper-vigilant. The issue about care homes that you just referred to, our evidence is that actually we do not have a lot of, in fact, virtually any EU nationals working in our care home sector. No, but actually we've had to do an exercise to actually understand that. I think the issue about monitoring and being vigilant in care homes is all part and parcel of this whole approach. And I welcome the protocol and the opportunity for us to be able to pull in that specialist advice, which we wouldn't have locally. I think we have to make sure that we connect with that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Batruni.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was a really good presentation. Really important issue, tragically pertinent given yesterday's events. And I'm really pleased that you both mentioned about cuckooing and county lines, which I am led to believe is a massive problem in Chepstow and the south of the county. Its links on the M4 corridor. And I'm aware of a case in my ward where cuckooing took place. I'm really looking forward to that training when it comes forward. I think it's necessary because my understanding, as I said, is that Chepstow is one of the worst in Wales for this practice, for county lines. The police are struggling to deal with it. Well, they're dealing with it, but it's such a vast problem. When I say struggling, they're doing their best. So we can help, or we can try to help as elected members in any way we can when we know particular houses or household owners who might be vulnerable to such practices. I was lucky enough to see a presentation from the police on what happens and what they do, which was just, yeah, that was a real education on what other human beings can do to each other, vulnerable adults with learning difficulties and their home taken from them and their money and then tortured for the sale of drugs, basically. So I really look forward to that training, and thank you ever so much for your report.
Councillor Edwards.
Could I just very quickly come back on that? I think it's right at the end of the protocol. It talks about how they link up. So certainly some of those cases that Dimitri refers to, serious organised crime groups, I know through Andrew Mason that's been flagged up, and it's important these groups talk to one another. So our role is very proactive in terms of disruption and working with the police, and we have done that on their behalf because our powers of entry are quite significant, so we're certainly on that side of it. I think Diane and Julie have spoken about what happens then to the victims in response to Councillor Watts. So certainly it's important those groups are linked up, and that's we report up then to the Safer Monmouthshire group.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the officers for a very, very informative and wonderful presentation, as it's really what society is like today. I'm just wondering, in Monmouthshire, is there a register or what of people that go missing? And we talk about trafficking, and we mainly tend to think that they're coming in from abroad. But as you state, that they can be like from street to street, and they sort of more or less disappear under the radar. Is there a register that we are aware of from year to year, the average that would go missing in Monmouthshire?
In terms of children, we've always, there's an organisation, Gwent Wide, which has always kept a register and a list and done debriefing for young people that are reported as missing, because quite often they come back. Adults that go missing tend to come under the auspices of the police, so they would keep that.
Councillor Fox.
It's only on the back of Dimitri's point, actually. Thanks for the presentation and for developing a protocol. Really important, and training will be extremely important for us to know what to spot, even in our villages. But Dimitri shared some points about how Chepstow is being recognised as one of. Can we make sure can we contextualise this right? And because if that is the case, that is, you know, I can imagine it bad. But how are, you know? Can you reflect a little bit more how, because we need to make sure that we're not living in some thinking it's all fantasy, you know, and in Monmouthshire it's not happening. But could you sort of qualify it a little bit?
What I would say is that the county lines training is really important, because there's a lot of difference between county lines where drugs are being, where local people are being recruited, local young people are being recruited, that the drug masters live outside, it's done by telephone, it's being bought, that young people are going outside the county collecting their drugs, bringing them back in, and therefore the people actually exploiting are nowhere near our area. And in fact, in terms of county lines, at the moment, Monmouthshire do not have a great deal of activity. Drug activity, however, is very large, and it is a problem, and I think Chepstow is. In terms of it being a hub in Wales, I don't think it is. I think, particularly across Gwent, there would be more significant problems in Newport. I think our danger is the attraction to Newport for the young people from Monmouthshire, but also Blaenau Gwent and Caerphilly have significantly more reported cases of county lines at the moment.
Okay.
I actually saw a police report. It was from the police where I saw that, and it was a list of towns and cities in Wales. And obviously, Cardiff and Swansea are top, proportionately, obviously. But then I was shocked to see that I could see Chepstow in that list of top 15, I think. So I don't think we should be kind of underplaying. If we're in the top 15 of Wales, we should be on that. And I was told that we had 2 or 3 county lines in that area.
All I can say in response is I spoke to the police this morning, the trafficking police this morning, and the exploitation police this morning, and they weren't giving me that information. However, I'm more than happy to go back and recheck with them. Yeah.
Councillor Pavia.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of things. We've spoken, excuse me, we've spoken about the Essex tragic events in Essex today. We really need to be careful because the information out there, we don't know if it's an issue of people trafficking or people smuggling. It's 2 very, very different issues, so we need to be careful on that. Second thing about Councillor Petruni said about Chepstow, I think that there is an issue, but we need to be careful not to over-egg the pudding, and I think as the leader said, we need to contextualise it. Chepstow Town Council had a meeting very recently with the Police and Crime Commissioner and with the local inspector, and we were reassured that the issue isn't as large as some people may like to think. Newport is definitely a hub, and potentially Chepstow as a spoke, particularly in relation to drugs. But in relation to county lines, I think it is a minor issue. There is an issue. There is an issue. There is an issue. There is an issue. I disagree with Councillor Watts. There is an issue. But we just need to contextualise it and just be careful how we use the language to contextualise it. There was an issue today, obviously, in discussion regarding the issue in Essex about the numbers in regard to the reporting of human trafficking. It has increased over the last few years, yet the conviction rate is in free fall. And I just wonder what the situation is like here in Gwent, and how potentially with the protocol and supporting those vulnerable people, because it is those testimonies of those people that is absolutely crucial in the conviction rate. How we how we link that together with the protocol in supporting those vulnerable people. Thank you.
What I would say is I think that's where our joined up working is, with the police, with housing, with public protection, with social services, with all parts of our council, with the ambulance service, the fire brigade. We work across, and that's what all of these groups are about, in terms of being very clear what the picture is. We don't know what the picture is, and this is early days, and I think that's what we're hoping that this protocol will do, that when we've trained staff sufficiently, we're able to develop an expertise, that we're able to really be able to sort of understand what is trafficking, what is parts and parcels of all the different elements. We will then be able to share the picture, whilst carrying on a very important thing, which is about identifying locations and disrupting business, basically. So we have a better idea of how best to do that and how prevalent this is in our area, because I think reality is we don't really know.
Thank you. Councillor Easton.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, there is a concerned problem with drug taking within the rural areas, and Powys is a particular place where it is fairly prevalent. And it's underneath the leafy trees where the drugs are taken. We don't really get to know who and where until something goes wrong. My question comes back to the trafficking of adults, or adults who are found to be in situations of what you described. Do you deal? We know how you deal with children. There is a specific way through Home Office how we deal with children, as Armand alluded to. How do you deal with adults in terms of once you've found them in these circumstances? Do you have a safe house for them? Do you manage other safe houses through other agencies? How do you deal with the adults? You don't just leave them on the streets, do you?
Quite often people have been, if they've been trafficked for exploitation, which is different to people smuggling and giving access to people who want to live here. When we're talking about trafficking, we're talking about people being moved for exploitation. Adults actually have and that's why it's complicated, they have the opportunity not to agree to a referral, not to access services, and this is one of the difficulties we have in terms of, as Dave said, when people are in terrible circumstances, they still will not turn against their people, their captors, their exploiters. For those people, we can only offer them support, we can only offer them an opportunity to make the appropriate referral, to get them the specialist service. There isn't really much we can do if they say no, except obviously we would log that and at least know about it. In regards to people being brought across who are just sort of basically found, in terms of that, that's when we would need to look Gwent-wide and nationally for support in terms of the specialist housing, the specialist places we could, and the specialist skills that we would need to support them.
Just in terms of these individuals, if they get into trouble with the authorities and get put into prison, when they come out of prison, the authority, if they're in Monmouthshire, has a responsibility to house these individuals. And that is a responsibility that I'm concerned about. Yes, if people choose not to, they've still got to be monitored. But when they come out of prison, we do have a responsibility to find places for them. So I understand.
To be fair, Councillor Easton, I think we're talking about a different thing there. I mean, obviously, people who are in the prison estate, we have a service around the prison estate to support people out of that. I think what Diane's talking about is people adults who potentially are victims of being trafficked. We would use the protocol, as we're describing, to actually ensure that they're referred for that specialist support. So we may not end up being the authority that, other than supporting them to go forward, would pick up any of that responsibility. I think I understand that,
but if they do get incarcerated, in the process of wherever they may be in society, they then become imprisoned. They have been exploited previously, and because of the situation they got themselves into, they may get arrested and put in prison. Then the circle goes around, then it becomes the responsibility you mentioned.
Do you want to continue that outside of this meeting? Perhaps you could have a discussion with Councillor Easton about it, further discussion. Councillor Jones? Penny Jones.
Thank you, Chair. It's just talking about working with other local authorities. It's my understanding, because we had a recent report to corporate parenting, that there is a dedicated officer that deals with, for instance, young people being dumped or brought in by lorry and left, say, for example, in major services. And this dedicated officer will deal with it alongside, but often alongside Newport local authority, because they're often placed in a Newport authority, so they are with like-minded people or with people who could act as a second family, for instance. This is the case, isn't it? So we don't automatically bring them into Monmouthshire because that is not the best place for them when we've got areas which will accept them. Okay, thank you.
That tends to be asylum seekers or children who, and there are specialist services. A lot of those specialist services we can call upon are within Newport or within Cardiff. And we have open channels with them, and they're part of our exploitation group, so that we've developed networks, we've developed relationships in order to be able to access them more speedily and more readily.
Well, thank you very much, officers, and Councillor Jones, for bringing that to us. As you can see from the comments being made by our members, it's been well worthwhile us discussing that this afternoon, and obviously we will be getting further information and workshops on this very subject. Thank you. We're just going to have a little pause while we're waiting for some visitors to arrive. We're going to take part in the next part, the corporate parenting annual report. We have 2 visitors who are going to be joining us, so we'll have a little pause. Thank you, councillors. I think we'll start again. Thank you very much. And I'd like to welcome our visitors this afternoon, Caris and Catherine, and young gentleman next. I'm sorry, didn't catch his name. Mike, welcome. We now move on to the Corporate Parenting Annual Report, which is going to be introduced by Councillor Penny Jones.
Thank you, Chair. As Chairman of the Corporate Parenting Panel, I'd just like to introduce the following report. The Monmouthshire County Council Corporate Parenting Strategy is an important document which identifies the collective responsibility across services and across local authorities to safeguard and promote the life chances of looked after children. This second strategy was endorsed at full council in June 2018 and is a 3-year strategy taking us to March 2021. This report makes the midway point and is an opportunity for members to refresh themselves on the strategy and hear about the work being done by the Corporate Parenting Panel and the support and the implementation of the strategy. Jane Rogers, Head of Children's Services, will give some brief notes from the report before she introduces two young ladies who've come in, Caris and Catherine. We really welcome you and thank you for coming, who will talk to members about their involvement with the parenting panel and the support they've had and the Care Leavers consultation event, which might be a bit of an eye-opener. But anyway, thank you and welcome. Jane?
Thank you, Penny. Over the last 18 months, the Corporate Parenting Panel has continued to promote the Council's duty towards children and young people who are looked after or who are care leavers, with a focus on the 9 priority areas that are set out within the report. During this period, we've really tried to ensure that panel members are well informed about the issues that affect some of our children and young people, so that members of the panel can appropriately challenge and support service areas and officers on the ground who work directly with those young people, care leavers and carers. We also have 2 foster carers who are standing members of the panel, so that they can directly bring foster carers' views to the panel. And we've more recently been able to involve care leavers themselves within the panel. We've had some real highlights and progress around our priority areas, and I hope that these stand out within the report that you'll have read. We've also had some young people individually who have achieved truly remarkable things. And of course, there is always more to be done. So over the next 18 months, we'll be working around support for supporting the educational achievement of children who are looked after, as well as taking forward the outcomes of the Care Leavers consultation event, such as the need to develop better options for support and accommodation for young people leaving care. We will, as always, be planning some further participation and celebration events, and we'll keep you as elected members informed about how you can get involved in some of these, such as our Christmas Wishes campaign. Now, I'm not going to talk anymore at all, because it's my great pleasure to introduce Caris and Catherine, who have joined us today to talk to you directly about their involvement with the panel and some of the issues that were aired at the Care Leavers consultation event, which you will have found also at Appendix 4 of your papers. And with them is Mike. And I just need to say a special mention about Mike. Mike is one of our personal advisors who work extremely closely with our care leavers and who provide great support to our care leavers. And so Mike's with Catherine and Caris just to support them as well as possible and to make them feel comfortable. So I'm going to hand over now to Caris and Catherine. They're going to, between us, we'll get some information from them. And then hopefully people might have questions also for either myself, Mike, Julie, or of course Catherine and Caris.
Thank you very much. Over to you, young ladies.
No, I don't want that one. No. Okay, so we met
in July, there was, I don't know how many care leavers attended.
About 12 of us.
So around 12 care leavers attended, and were invited by our PAs to discuss with members of the corporate parenting panel the 9 priorities and how we felt that what we felt needed to be focused on within those priorities, and I suppose we've just given an opportunity to
just give our views, wasn't it? Like say what we thought was going well, what they could improve on, anything else we wanted to add to it really, but just to have our input as well.
So what do you think was it? I was going to say it did involve cake.
Oh yes,
It did,
yeah,
and cake.
and coffee, yeah.
And you had about an hour together where I think some of the members of the corporate parenting were queued outside, and you had an hour together with the
We locked them in.
advisors to really go through each priority area, think what was we were doing okay at, and where we needed to improve. And do you want to say a bit about what you think some of the main topics were that kind of came out of that?
Yeah, do you want to do
I
one
think.
or
Which one?
Yeah.
I don't know which ones we said were the main ones.
So shall I do that one then?
Yeah.
So we discussed that we didn't like the term corporate parents because I think it's incredibly business sounding, and actually that's not appropriate. And actually you're not parents, and that's could be perceived as quite offensive to a lot of young people who've had difficulties with their parents, as all children in care do really. So we discussed that we'd like to come up with a new name. That hasn't kind of happened yet. We're open to any suggestions because it's a really difficult one to name, but it was agreed that that was appropriate, and when the right name is found it will be changed. And we also discussed the need for care leavers to attend corporate parenting panels. I suppose this is a bit of an ongoing one because they happen in the day, and actually lots of us, myself and Caris included, work, so we have daytime occupation, and I would love to sit I would sit on the panel every time, but actually I can't leave work for it. So we discussed potentially having it alternating evening and day sessions, so that care leavers are allowed to attend, because we're kind of a part of corporate parenting that isn't necessarily catered for, that isn't represented on the corporate parenting panel at the moment properly. Do that one?
The next thing we mentioned was to with looked after children having safe and stable homes. We said a lot of us care leavers felt that once you hit 18, you're kind of forced to move out, whether you're in foster placements or residential, and it's kind of quite rushed. All of a sudden you hit 18 and all of a sudden they're like, off you go live independently, and they don't really integrate you to it quite like slowly, or when you feel ready to it, it's kind of hit 18 and you've got to go. Me and Catherine say, well, we were in residential, so it was a bit different for us. Like we had help with like independent skills, cooking, cleaning, managing money, and we said it'd be quite nice to have workshop with foster carers so they can do the same with people in foster care, because a lot of the other young people from foster care were saying they didn't have any of that. They were literally hit 18 and they had to kind of learn it all themselves, like with the help of their PAs. So he said it'd be quite nice for foster carers to be able to do the same work with those young people, so we're all kind of in the same boat and we can, I don't know, move on to independence a bit more easily instead of being forced into it. What else did we say on that one?
I suppose there's nowhere to go is the other thing.
Yeah,
because actually when you turn you turn 18, if you're we were in children's homes, so they have a cut off of 18, so it doesn't matter whether they want to keep you or not. It's not like there's no such thing as when I'm ready for residential. So both me and Caris were forced to leave basically the day of our 18th birthday, which not only is traumatising, but also we didn't have a place to go, because unfortunately there's a massive gap in Monmouthshire in terms of supported lodgings and when I'm ready placements. So I ended up in a placement in Caerphilly, which is kind of another story, but that's quite often why young people end up living on their own at 18, which actually realistically no 18-year-old that I know would want to do, and a lot of if you haven't had those if you haven't been taught those skills prior to moving out, then you are 18, you can't cook, you can't clean, and you've lost, you know, you're used to having lots of people in a big house and then you have nobody. So we discussed that there is a massive need for supported lodgings places, supported lodgings providers to be found, and when I'm ready placements, which are those placements for foster care and for children who are being fostered that can extend past 18 if the foster care and the child agrees to it. Oh, that's part of that. Oh yeah, like new foster carers being told. New foster carers need to be told that they should be able to past 18. Should I say that? No, because I can't remember what it is. Okay. So we also discussed how any advertisements to try and encourage new foster carers to come onto the system should mention about the fact that they should be willing. I would argue it would be compulsory that they would consider keeping the placement open past 18, and they should be supported to do that financially, because at the moment they're not in the same way that you are as a foster child. But actually, if it's the child's home, that's what it should be appropriate. They should stay until, you know, they're ready, which is the purpose of When I'm Ready. But actually, When I'm Ready only works if your foster care agrees to it, and they can quite easily say, no, I don't get the right money anymore, off you go at 18, even though, you know, that child has called it their home for however many years. So we discussed that new foster carers should be completely aware of and be expected, really, how you police that, I don't know, but should be expected to facilitate the extension of placements.
You've covered most of that.
Yeah.
Jobs and apprenticeships. Yeah. Another big thing we find is training and education for young people. We find this quite a difficult one for many reasons. One thing, like we were discussing before the meeting, was a lot of young people and care leavers obviously want to go to college or university and stuff like that, but they struggle then if they're living independently to have the money to financially live by themselves, but also get education and training for the jobs that they want. So a lot of young people do like to have like apprenticeships and stuff like that. But again, there's quite a shortage of apprenticeships and support to get into them. There's not much about really for young people.
And actually, if there are apprenticeships in the council, why can't the council go the extra mile to put their care leavers first?
Yeah.
So I discussed about how I would really like all council jobs to have a box to tick on your application, so you can declare if you're a care leaver if you'd like to, like you do for disabilities. That guarantees you an interview, because actually, like a disability could be seen as an advantage being a care leaver. I see as a massive disadvantage, in which case the least the council can do is to actually give us those little step-ups where possible. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to do it for private jobs, but you know, the council, of course, they can do that. And so I requested that to happen. I'm not sure if that has happened yet, but I'm looking out for it.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Or it's like how I found personally with that. Obviously, I've asked, following the last meeting we had about setting up apprenticeships for obviously our own young people within Monmouthshire. I wanted to do an apprenticeship in youth work. So I was asked if I could do that, and everyone apparently was discussing it with the right people. Everyone agreed it, but then they said their main issue was funding. So all the right people said they'd set up an apprenticeship for me, but then again, it's waiting for the funding then, which makes it difficult.
And actually, they could afford to put you in £1,000 weekly placement when you were a child, but at 18, it's like tens of £1,000s, yeah. But now at 18, or you know, 20, they can't pay for you to do work for them. It's, you know,
doesn't quite make sense, does it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next thing we discussed was health and making sure that all young people are accessing health appropriately. And the main thing we discussed was that there's a shortfall of mental health services, which is kind of across the board for everybody in every county in the UK. But I think it's really relevant to talk about it with care leavers, because we all come out of the care system with trauma. It's really, you know, it's appropriate for every young person who has been in care to receive mental health support where possible. but also I'm aware that there is psychology input in children's services that stops at 18. So I, again, stress that actually, why can't care leavers access that psychology input if it's there to 18? Because a lot of the reason why we'd need to access it would be because of things that happened, you know, leading up to care or in care, in which case we should be eligible to access that psychology support too. And that was kind of agreed with, but I'm not sure what's, you know, agreeing doesn't mean it kind of goes forward, but yeah.
Yes, we don't know where that's to.
Yeah.
Next thing we talked about was obviously like sports, leisure, play, hobbies and stuff like that. We asked if, as care leavers, we could all get leisure passes, obviously to do different things, and our main one we wanted to do was passes for the gym for all of us. We couldn't see why we couldn't all be given a free pass to go to a local gym in the Monmouthshire Council. I know it was agreed that it was a good idea. What's been done about it, we're still not quite sure.
So it's been agreed, and then but I would like to point out that it was agreed months ago, and actually nothing has, and that's not through lack of trying through Debbie and Mike, because I know that Debbie's been emailing back and forth, and actually it just doesn't come through. And I think it's interesting that those sorts of things keep kind of being agreed, but not actually, I'm not seeing it. And it's brilliant that it's been agreed, and I'm really happy about that. I don't want to seem like I'm complaining, because I'm receiving wonderful support from care leaving services, but actually, if you've agreed it, whoever should be funding it just needs to give those passes to us then, and off I go on a treadmill, you know? It's really that. Yeah. Fifth.
Still, yeah.
I don't have the other page.
It's that one there.
Oh.
No. You're missing a page, Mike.
No, that's 4 and 5.
Yeah.
Oh, it's right. It's right. Let's discuss that, haven't we?
Yeah, we went through it on the first thing, didn't we?
Do you want to text him? Oh yeah. Do you want to say about what's happening?
Oh, is that what we were discussing about there?
Yeah, say about that cross. Yeah, you say about that.
So another thing we think quite strongly about is obviously when you're in care, a lot of us, we get moved out of county quite easily. If you can't live in county, they'll happily move you far away, as we've both experienced. We find when, say you hit 18 and you move back into Monmouthshire, if you then all of a sudden yourself want to live in another county, like at the moment I'm registered obviously everything with Monmouthshire, but all my family and support is in Newport, so I want to move into Newport, but it's not as easy as just being able to transfer everything over. It's quite difficult to be able to get housing and support like that. So we, we find it's easy when it suits you guys just to move us. But the minute we want to, it's not as straightforward to like cross counties as such.
Because you're eligible for, you get a really high banding on Monmouthshire Home Search, so for social housing as a care leaver, but you only get it in Monmouthshire. So if Caris wants to live in Newport, actually it doesn't cross over.
Yeah, not registered then or known as a care leaver, they completely wipe that
She'd
out.
get a really low
because
banding
I wasn't
then.
a care leaver within Newport, which don't see why there can't be that crossover. If you're a care leaver in Monmouth, why can't you be seen as a care leaver with the Newport housing and keep your banding? And vice versa, because like we said, I'm sure there's probably people in Newport that want to come into Monmouthshire, but their banding will change, so they won't do it. Was there anything else on that one?
No.
That's it, I think. I think that was it.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that was with the housing, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Go for that one. Linking back on it.
What in terms of having to move out?
Yeah.
Or just generally? I think
Generally,
I think because being a care leaver, we're a very small minority in Monmouthshire of people our age, because fortunately there aren't many children in care, which is brilliant, but that then means that our experiences are difficult to understand with our peers perhaps, and particularly having to live alone at a young age, and it's really easy as a care leaver, and it's a really kind of well-documented thing that lots of care leavers experience loneliness and isolation. I know there's something that both of us have experienced, and I haven't spoke to a care leaver who doesn't feel like that in some respect, which again, crosses over to mental health services and things, but also I suppose it crosses over to peer support as well. So whenever we have meetings where lots of care leavers get together, I find it incredibly cathartic and therapeutic, because I'm amongst people who, without having to talk about it, understand my experiences to an extent, understand how rubbish things were, and we have a mutual compassion for each other, I suppose. So any kind of events when care leavers are brought together, I think are incredibly important and healthy, because as another minority group, all minority groups, they talk about needing to provide experiences for those people to be together, and I think care leavers, again, come into that. Yeah. But I think we're almost not considered as a minority group properly, because where are we? We're all over, and you don't know when you look at somebody that they're a care leaver. Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Yes. Yeah. Normally they say I'm too loud. I don't normally need this. Thank you. I think you first agreed that the two of them are amazing, and it's any easier. I think I'm more nervous than them, so well done. Fantastic, really. I'm going to embarrass myself with these two. Yeah, first of all, thank you for Penny and Jane for, inviting us to this. Setting up the corporate panel, all the young people we've had 12, we talked to others. And I know Penny's very keen, and Tudor and Jane to keep this going. For me, I attend lots of meetings with the Children's Commission, Sally Holland, with Voices with Care, and obviously she's a champion for looked after children. What comes out of all the meetings we have with our young people, there is lots of support in foster care. As soon as a young person comes to 18, they're now an adult on the birth certificate, irrespective of what happened in the past, really, and things change dramatically with jobs, with benefits, with housing, and, we got to champion these young people because they're amazing, the backgrounds they've had, and things these two young ladies are doing are amazing, and we've got loads of others like it as well. So, again, I know I go on a little bit now, but I could talk about loads of different things I wanted to, really, but things like the council tax exemption, when we got young people that have got their own tenancy, I think it started in England 4 years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, and I think Monmouthshire started last year. That is massive to young people that are working and they haven't got to pay £80 a month council tax. They're exempted in 25. I mean, first of all, well done for that. That's absolutely fantastic. £20 a week to a lot of us ain't a lot, but the young people working on minimum wage, it is massive. And it's all I've had. I think we've got 7 or 8 young people in their own tenancies, and it makes a massive difference.
For me, it's the difference between getting by and not, actually.
Yeah, and working. I mean, we've all heard about the poverty trap. And believe me, unless you work in it, and you see these young people, I didn't know what it was 15 years ago when you work with them, but every one of them are fighting hard to get out of it. And I think they're all going to be commended, really, for working hard, trying hard. And, I just hope now we keep all this going now and support these young people because they deserve it. We got great links in all the job centres in Monmouthshire. We got something called Spots now. They're specific to care leavers, where they understand their background. And when Deb and I take young people for universal credit, they're so supportive. It's fantastic. For me, I'll finish in a minute, sorry. Is housing and jobs, really. Housing's an absolute nightmare for our young people. Supported lodgings when I'm ready. To expect young people at 18, last week they're 17, this week they're 18, to go out somewhere, in a B&B or a hostel, it's just not right. I mean, we got to have foster carers that are going to stick with these young people in 21. And anybody tell you any different, it's all about finance, and it is. I mean, the Welsh Assembly started when I'm ready 3 years ago. But what it doesn't do is it keep the money the same for foster carers. It drops to £160 a week. And they'll be open with you or with us and say, look, we're not keeping them after 18. And I've worked with some people, they've been at 8 and 9 years. To me, they're part of the family, they should be, but they're still going at 18. And I really struggle with that now, and I've been doing it a long time. And then jobs as well. I mean, I drive every inch of Monmouthshire, every day, every week, every month, and I love it. And I see hundreds and hundreds of vans, building vans, Melon Homes, Monmouthshire Homes, and I can't get apprenticeships for a couple of the youngsters I work with for plastering and I just find that incredulous. I mean, ridiculous that we can't employ our own young people. Like I say, we look after them from 6, 7 years of age, but then we can't support it with a job. Really,
But it also benefits you because it helps the statistics of care leavers in education, training or employment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a win-win actually, and I don't believe for a second that that's not something that could be done because.
Well, again,
Well, it could. It's just,
yeah, we got to, yeah. Anyway, thank you very much. Sorry I rabbled on a bit then. Sorry. Thanks. And we are open to any questions, any of us, so please fire away.
Thank you for that. Councillor Blakeborough.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, I just think you two are remarkable women, really. You are very eloquent, and I say I've just been sort of enthralled listening to everything you say, because it is coming from experience, and it's something we do really have to listen to. I think when you were saying about it's really frustrating when things are agreed but there's no action. Welcome to our world. From everything you've said, I think the biggest thing that stands out is this. You're 18, right? Go on, cope on your own. I've got 2 boys. One is 19, one is 30, and I'm still getting phone calls from my 30-year-old, and I couldn't even dream of just letting him be independent on his own from the age of 18. And I think you coming this far shows huge emotional resilience and huge strength. I'll tell you what, if I could employ somebody, I definitely would employ you too. But there is definitely this gap, isn't there? So at 18, you're an adult in age only, but as you say, some people may be ready to leave at 18 and some not. And I don't know if there's something we can do in terms of lobbying Welsh Government, I think it's through Welsh Government, to basically say to review the system, to have sort of a flexible move from 18 to say 21, so that there's a review that goes on for that 18-year-old, because maybe they need a little less money because the 18-year-old is able to work, or more money because the 18-year-old is in university or what have you. But I think there's probably a time to somehow, and I don't know what we can do as a group, to just suggest to the Welsh Government to review this, that we do need this flexible 3-year window, I'm sort of suggesting. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
So,
sorry, go on.
So something that I'm really passionate about is me and Caris never got the opportunity to take part in When I'm Ready anyway, even if hypothetically we had wonderful foster carers who would have kept us on, because residential placements do not offer When I'm Ready. And to me, that feels incredibly cruel, and I'm still incredibly bitter about it, because it was my home, they were my family, but as soon as I turned 18, they could not do anything about it, and I had to leave.
But that's across the board, Harris.
Absolutely, yeah. But that is that's not a Monmouthshire thing, but that is the Welsh Government kind of, and I would be really keen to support in doing something about that, because it feels... And in theory, it's the same for those who've been fostered and then have been kicked out. But I think that's a bit more, that's more down to supporting the foster carers, isn't it? But actually, there's something wrong with the policy, because it's not appropriate for all care leavers. It's not fit for purpose, I would argue.
Yeah. And just to add on that, actually, if you look at it financially, if we put money into somebody staying at home till they were 21, we'd save a lot of money on mental health services,
Absolutely.
probably.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I had a boy in a children's home last year. He was doing his A-levels, come 18, he had to move. And it's just like, you can't be in a children's home after 18, so you're no longer a child. Sally Holland, there is things going through, I'm understanding, with the Welsh Assembly at the moment. How long it's going to take, I don't know, but it is highlighted quite high up in the Welsh Government.
Thank you. Councillor Eason.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's 2 points I'd like to make. One is about ourselves, and I noticed in the report that only 17 members of us have taken on corporate parenting training. I hope I'm one of them. If not, I will get it, and I believe the other 26 should be getting it as well. Well, if I haven't done it if it wasn't done this term, it's probably done the last term. But the second question is the point you made about apprenticeships. We did encourage through the enterprise section apprentice. Why are we not really using the apprentice. I know well, my grandson went through apprentice. He's now an electrician with Mellin.
Yeah.
He's done well, and there are other people I know who are going through apprentice. Why don't we really pull in on that and really get as many people as you can onto apprentice?
Okay, can I answer that? Am I on there?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, we work with Anna closely with the Enterprise of the Youth Service, but they pay £3.90 an hour. Young children living in a flat on their own can't live on that. I want to get an apprentice wage of £8, and I can't see that being unfair. I mean, my own children, I'm sure your children, when they were apprenticeships, they start £8, £9. Why should they work for £3.90? And young people, we've had some, they've started it, and sometimes at the end of that year, there's no jobs for them anyway. We've tried to access Mel in Monmouthshire, a couple of lads I work with the youth service, and we're ringing them, and they are trying hard to get them, you know, to get places, but for some reason we can't get them. We can't get them. Yeah, sorry, Jane.
Please do, Jane.
Yeah, definitely. I agree, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll let Jane answer that.
What I learned at the Care Leavers event was that sometimes how a focus on a particular statistic can really mask a problem. Because we do well, Monmouthshire, in terms of our not in education and employment statistics. We get 18 to 20-year-olds, the 1 and 2 years after they've left care, into employment and training opportunities. We're quite good at that, particularly through the Enterprise and Hannah's team.
Definitely.
But there was a couple of the lads there from the Care Leavers who are saying, but it's after.
They're 21.
So when I drop off that statistic, and when I'm actually looking for employment, that's where things fall away. So if I've got an apprenticeship, why am I doing it? Because actually it doesn't lead to a job. And we were starting then to think about, you know, the power of us as an employee and the links that we have with our partners, even the health board, as employers. I think we've got to take that forward. So it's not the kind of the statistic that we count, it's the after the statistic that we don't count where we're really feeling that the problem is.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Massive thanks for the presentation and the report, and it's been really useful for those of us who've less knowledge of the subject or little background in social care. And I think it opens our eyes to the massive responsibility of the service and for those who benefit from it. I've got a couple of questions about care leavers in particular. A couple of points first. Is it possible to email us a link to the IPC review that's referenced on page 118, please? And I note then the 9th priority doesn't include accommodation, it refers to employment and training, and I just wonder why that was the case. So the two questions then, could you tell us a little more about the pathways to accommodation, what they are for care leavers, and outline what the When I'm Ready placements are? And how do accommodation options in Monmouthshire compare with other local authorities in our region? Thank you.
Who would like to answer that?
Do you want me to answer that, Jane? I'll go. Yeah? Am I on? Yeah. Sorry. I know it's the last time I've been invited, sorry. Right, we register young people, say 16 and a half, 17, with Monmouthshire Home Search. So they're now eligible, and as they know, obviously they know myself and Deb, as a care leaver, they're in band 2A. So that's the highest band they can get in. They can bid then, technically bid for a property, but if they're in foster care, which they are at 17, obviously they're not a priority. Then what happens come 18, if we know a couple of months before that they got to move, there's no one-bedroom flats available for them, and I wouldn't want a 17-year-old girl in a one-bedroom flat anyway. It's not right. You wouldn't want your own. I wouldn't want young people I work with. What we need is our own flats, really, our training flats. They've been talked of. I think there's a scheme going through, I think it's in the pipeline, Jane, that there's going to be some training flats, hopefully 2 in Abergavenny and 2 in Chepstow, where Monmouthshire will own them, and we can get some support groups to help Deb and I, and young people going in there. They could prepare then for 6 months in there, then move on to their own place. But the problem is when we fall at Monmouthshire Home Search Centre to say, where are we? I've had girls living in B&Bs in Abergavenny, and I'll never do it again. If that ever happens to me, I'd come here first. I wouldn't do it. She was in there for 5 months, and that just ain't right. We can't get people into our hostels. They're full in Hill House and Woodstock. So if anything happened to one of our young people now that was 18, I don't know what we do. That's the truth. It would be a B&B. And that just ain't suitable. It's 2019. It's not safe. It's not appropriate. And it's not being a good corporate parent. Well, the answer is, I don't know. But that's how it is. That's how it is. We need our own trading. I don't know if there's empty buildings around the place. There's a lot going on about it. But again, I just cannot believe that we can't source our own properties. I just can't.
I moved out when I was 19 into my own flat, and I live in. It took me months to get it, and which isn't actually very long. That's quite impressive.
It was.
Took me 5 months to get it, and that was really impressive. And I lived at home during that time, and it was incredibly tense and grim. The flat that I live in now is fine. You have to pay for your own carpets and floors and all of that sort of thing. You don't get any money for paint, so you have to pay for that yourself. It was actually really costly to set up my own flat, despite it having meant to be ready for me. And some of that you can get through your care leaving grant, but not all of it.
Leaving care grant,
and actually, I also live in one flat of 6, and I would argue that as a 19-year-old young woman, I'm not anymore, I'm 21, but I was incredibly vulnerable, and my neighbours weren't appropriate. I have neighbours who take drugs, neighbours who are incredibly violent, that would wake me up in the middle of the night shouting. I had police over quite regularly. My neighbour below me had his door bashed in, and that happens wherever you live. I get that, but as a young person, you're incredibly vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And no parent would be happy for their child to live where I live.
Did anybody want to comment on that? Or?
I mean, it's so powerful hearing the experiences, isn't it? And, there is this is, a real area for us that we've got to give more attention to as a service. We are, of course, doing what we can do. I mean, and that for us as a service starts when a young person's 15, 16, and our pathway planning for that young person, where we're really trying to think through what's the future pathway for this child who's going to be turning into an adult at 18. We work with the carers, we work with the placements within the confines of the legal kind of framework that we are in. We always encourage foster carers to really think where it's appropriate, whether they can extend the living and support for the young person, either through When I'm Ready, which is a government scheme which allows foster carers to, or encourages foster carers to allow the child to still live there beyond 18, or supported as more similar to a foster care placement, or through supported lodgings, which is a kind of a slight step down again. But for all kinds of reasons, we haven't had great take-up from our foster carers, although it is an improving picture. When we recruit foster carers now, picking up on Catherine's point, we really do emphasise this as being that kind of, this isn't about a kind of job and at 18 it all ends. This is about really a life change and about embracing that young person as part of your, if it's a permanent placement, as part of your family moving forward. But there's a limit to what we can do as a service on our own. We're working closely with housing, as Mike has alluded to look and see whether there is any options around, from a commissioning point of view, developing our services so that we have got better support and accommodation options for 16 to 24, 25-year-olds. The question also asks whether our provision stacks up well against other authorities, and I have to say probably it doesn't at the moment. It doesn't stack up well. We're starting from quite a low point, a low pool of foster carers to draw from. Not great provision that's been historically within the council for care leavers, but it's something together with housing that we're actively working on. In fact, the corporate parenting panel will be receiving the children's commissioning strategy next time, and one of the key priority areas within that is the development of support and accommodation options for young people. With our increasing numbers of looked after children, of course, in the future, that's going to mean increased numbers of care leavers, so it's something we've absolutely got to prioritise.
Thank you, Jane. I've got a few more councillors who've indicated they wish to speak, and then I'm going to come back to Councillor Jones to finish off. But at the moment, we've got Councillor Harris, Councillor Thomas, Councillor Edwards and Councillor Fox, and then I come back to Councillor Jones. So, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And congratulations to you two young ladies there, because what you've said is stimulating and provocative as well. And it's a good thing that it is provocative, because at times we here need provoking. And whilst we were on the subject of you looking for help, etc., you should be making sure that your county councillor is on your side. So find out who he or she is and start getting them working for you. That is important. That really is. Can I ask you both, are you in education at the moment, or are you looking for employment?
I currently work for Iceland, and like I said earlier, looking for an apprenticeship into it.
Right.
I did an apprenticeship in a primary school to become a teaching assistant, and I'm now a permanent member of staff employed in a Monmouthshire school as a teaching assistant.
The reason for asking is that we should consider employing these two young ladies as soon as we possibly can. I don't think I need to say any more. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thanks. And thank you both for coming today. It's quite an ordeal here in the chamber to speak, and particularly for you two. The one thing I would say, the evening that we had was absolutely excellent, and it's one of the best things. Perhaps best isn't the right word, but it was the most moving experience I've had since joining this council. And of all the things that I do on this council, I would say being on the corporate parenting panel is the most challenging, but in many ways it's the most rewarding. And all credit to you today for coming. A couple of things. One thing, I'm absolutely gobsmacked that you still haven't had a leisure pass. You know, no, I thought you had. And when it came up, I assumed that as I looked after child or care leaver, you would automatically have one. I can have one because of my age, unfortunately. But I could afford, well, to pay for my swimming or whatever. But I hope that is sorted, you know, as soon as possible. But in terms of the position that you're in, I think housing is obviously key. Jobs, employment, further education. You are not in such a strong position as somebody coming from a supportive and possibly well-off family who can support people to move into higher education or to move into work. And that is a key priority. In terms of giving priority, you know, in terms of employment, I really think we, as an authority, we should look at this. We said earlier on about people who've been in the armed forces, which I don't disagree with, but I do think that looked after children or looked after young people should have that priority as well in terms of this authority and the associated authorities that work with us, like MHA, etc., and possibly with the housing associations and perhaps wider as well. It's something we really need to look at. We also need, I think, and I know times are hard in terms of money and resources for local authorities, but I really think we need to look at this issue of hosteling, for want of a better word, but suitable places for people to live. It's not appropriate, as you say, for you to live in a place where you've got people taking drugs, this shouting and swearing, the police are being called. I haven't got daughters, I've got 3 sons. But if I had a daughter, or even with my sons, if there's an issue like that, I would help them to sort it out. You are not in that fortunate position. And I really think we need to look at this with more care. I am disappointed, I've got to say. I'm on the corporate planning. I looked at the terms of reference, said there should be 5 of us there. Normally it's 2 or 3, and it's myself from Labour and Councillor Penny Jones and Councillor Lisa Dimmock from the Conservative Party were there. It is an important function of this authority. It is looking after people who don't have the same opportunities as other children within the authority. So I really think we need to have a look at this, but to think about the apprenticeships and the housing. That's got to be a priority.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, girls, very much. Very articulate in your presentation. Well, I have had first-hand experience of this. I've raised 4 sons, and then we fostered a child off the at-risk register, which we later adopted when she was 2 years of age. She's now married. She's 29 this week. She's got a daughter of her own, another one on the way. So we do feel that when we adopted her, which was final then, she is our child, but we get no financial help once you are adopted. Maybe perhaps if more children were adopted, they then have that connected family, which you obviously feel that you do not have. It's the support of a family, no matter what age you are or what age the children grow up to. They still have that extended family to support them, which is obviously lacking when it comes to you when you leave at 18. Also, I think, yes, corporate parents is a strange word, but as parents, we look after our own. But then you are classed as being one of our own. I hope Monmouthshire has been good for you and looked after you well up until now. But we don't know your personal circumstances or how long that you have been in care. But I think we all have a responsibility to all of our youngsters in this county and beyond. But I don't know whether there is an easy answer to it or an easy way of not labelling you as look after children, because I think that in itself conjures a different interpretation for different people. But obviously you're determined, and I look forward to you having a good future. But you're not the only ones, are you? There's an awful lot more out there that are having the same problems. But I wish you well, and I do appreciate you coming here today to give your sort of angle from it that we don't all see, because sometimes there are very tragic circumstances why some are placed in care, whether you've got siblings or whatever, and so on. It's not easy for us then to know all the circumstances and where to place you appropriately, because lots of youngsters in the county, whether they're in care or not, have hidden problems inside an ordinary family anyway. But I do wish you well, and thank you very much for coming and enlightening us this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Pavia.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just thank you for your words and for your presentation, and just to say I think the testimony you've given over the last sort of half an hour, 45 minutes has given me a better snapshot of particularly the weaknesses of our services than sitting in several committees and reading several reports. I suppose my points really are for officers and to understand really there's obviously some quick wins. The leisure passes issue needs to be addressed, and I'd be interested to know what the timescales are to get that done. Secondly, in terms of housing, I think particularly with the redesignation of Part 9 and having housing representation now on the RPBs, I think there's some regional working that needs to be done here, particularly linking our social registered landlords across the regional area and have some sort of passporting system that can work for our care leavers, not just in this authority but across the region. And I think that needs to be a priority for the Regional Partnership Board. Linked to that then, I'd be interested to know the pressures around mental health transition from CAMS to adults services, particularly in relation to Tier 2 and Tier 3 services. Again, I think there's potential work that needs to be done regionally on this. But I'd be interested to know what those pressures are, particularly within the authority, and whether or not adopting a more regional approach will help us and will work. I think that's everything. But just to say thank you ever so much, and obviously your peers that you were on the panel with, we welcome you to come in as many times as you like to speak to us, because it really is powerful stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fox.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much for coming in. Thanks, Mike, as well. Yeah, you've I think, Paul, you captured it well. A session, an exposure like this is worth so much more than umpteen meetings that we sit in. And you've shared some strong messages. And I used to chair the corporate panel years ago, and indeed before foster parents, well, we encouraged foster parents to join it at that time. And I'm so pleased that it's now doing what I was hoping and we were all hoping it would do, and expose some of these issues. And for you to articulate those to us today has been very, very helpful. As leader of the council, there's some of those things I didn't realise, and I'm sorry for that I didn't realise that some of those things you were up against. I didn't realise you were cut free if you call it that, at 18. That's inhumane. The definition of a young person is right through to 25.
It is now.
Under the Act. You know, so why is it that we just cut that off at 18?
Exactly.
It's morally wrong. It's morally wrong. And there's a joined-up effort needs to do to change the law in these respects. There are some things that we can do, but I don't like making false promises because resources are tight, and sadly it does come down. But there's some things we can do. It's not against, you know, it must be possible for us to identify dwellings which are suitable for training. It must be. You know, I know a young person who's been in Hill House, and I've been in his room, and you know, and I think that's not the sort of place. It's great for what he's having to the needs when he needed it. But it's not where I'd want my kids to be.
Exactly.
You know, and I want, you know, I've got lots of kids and lots of grandkids, and I want them to have the very best in their life, and I want the very best for all of the children and young people in Monmouthshire. And we're in some ways we've well, the system is letting people down. So I think some of the messages you've shared today resonate really strongly with many of us, and I know those actions are incorporated in the strategy and how we're but you know, some of the specifics aren't in there, and I really want to get to grips, you know, straight in on things like that housing, that cut-off date, you know, those transitional issues, you know. So, you know, Penny, I think, you know, there's a piece of work outside of the corporate parenting panel that there is that we need to sit down and be part of, and we need to hear very clearly some of those messages, because I believe there are things we can do here.
Quick wins.
Now. I believe, apart from, I apologise you haven't had your leisure pass. If you haven't got it by tomorrow, I want to know. You know, it needs to happen, doesn't it? You know, and that's for everybody else who's looking for one. But just again, thank you. Your messages haven't fallen on deaf ears. They've probably touched us more than many things have touched us in this chamber for a long time. So we will take those back and we will see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fox. Before I ask Councillor Jones to conclude, I'm going to invite our Chief Exec to say a few words. We should say a few words, but can I add my thanks and say how much I really do appreciate your coming along and working with the officers and members, and everything that you contribute now is going to help people in the future, and that really is very special. So thank you very much indeed.
I think you're two very, very powerful young people, but you're representing a cadre of very powerful young people, aren't you? And you've all said it, it's been an absolute privilege to listen to your story and to get a sense of your ambitions and what you want to do. Councillor Blakeborough said something a little while ago. She said, if I could employ you, I would. Well, I can and I will. That's the difference. And I know your story. I heard about when you got your apprenticeship within the school. I didn't know that had been converted into a full-time job, but I'm absolutely...
It's temporary, but all teaching assistant posts are, so if you do something about that,
I like you a lot, actually. I'm not actually sure you're in the right job, but we can have another conversation.
You can all look out, I tell you.
But certainly I've got a lot of time for Iceland as an organisation, but that's not where you belong. So if you want to come and work in our youth service, we can sort that out. The wider thing is about the people you represent. There are I'd say about 40 of us in this room, and we've all got personal, you know, there's a place for the corporate parenting sort of group, and there's a place for strategy and policy. But I think between the 40 of us, there is not a young person in Monmouthshire that we cannot find a job for. I don't think there's a person in Monmouthshire I can't find a job for, actually, if they're brought to my attention. And that's not just within our own organisation. Just think about who you know. Just think about the firms acting in your ward. You know, this thing about, I buy into this thing about this title. It doesn't work for me. It's very paternal. But actually, if you stick with the principle out of it, it's about being active, isn't it? You know, it's great, those of you that find the time to do what you're doing. But we can all elevate this. We really, really can. I should have actually known that we were only shelling out £3.90 an hour. You know, if
I was paid £3.70 an hour.
You know,
oh, sorry, £3.70.
If the difference is a £5 an hour,
exactly,
37 hours a week, that's within our grasp, isn't it? Really, and it's nice to know that some things are helping. But as the leader just said, the distance between agreeing to do something and doing something should be a breath. It shouldn't be a week or a month or a year. So things like leisure passes, you know, they will be sorted out by this time tomorrow. No,
that's why we
but more interestingly, around the points you're raising, it helps me. I'm going to want to understand systemically why that has not been the case. So sorting it is easy. That comes with a gifted position. Actually understanding why it hasn't been sorted is the issue that is going to command more of my attention. So again, it's thanking you for the way that you presented yourself. For you particularly, you know, there's a very direct conversation that we can have. But let's not lose sight of the cadre of individuals that these two represent. It's for each and every single one of them. That thing about housing, it might be a personal thing, but I cannot stand the word hostel.
No.
I do not like it. It sounds institutional.
They are institutional places.
Yeah, but
so if you want to change the name of them, you need to change the way they work.
every 18-year-old I know, and I've got two sons in this sort of age bracket, right? They want shared living. That's what they want. They want to live with their age group, do the things that their age group want to do. And that's what we give that opportunity to every child that goes to a university just about in the UK today. Every child gets their first year, I think, just about on campus in shared living accommodation, which seems to be going up and up and up in terms of its standard. Surely we can crack that. We've got about 4,500 houses in our planning system at the moment to be built. So are we big enough to say, this is a challenge, isn't it? Maybe we don't need that next play area. Maybe we just don't need it. Maybe we just don't need that next something that we've always wanted. Maybe we'll have 10 or 15 or 20 of these sorts of provisions instead, which are real step on, step up. So what I don't want you to leave you feeling is that you cannot address any of these problems. I think we can address them all if we really want to, but it comes at an opportunity cost. So, you know, in a month's time, in 3 months' time, for you as councillors, for us as officers, will the last hour still be resonating with us? When you're sat in other gatherings, arguing for other things, will you set those things to one side and come back to this conversation and say, well, do you know what? There are some things that are more important. If the answer is yes, this has been one of the biggest hours, I think, in the history of this council. And I genuinely mean that. Because the money that we expend on young people, as you've described yourself, is significant. But the value we create needs to be as significant. And I think, ladies, that's the challenge that you're given to us. Mike, you never need to ask to speak. You never have asked to speak. Just keep speaking. And to have advocates like Mike, I think equally needs to be recognised. You go all shy and humble and all that sort of stuff now.
It's my job.
Well, actually, Mike, it is your job, but actually, really, it's your vocation, isn't it?
I love my job. I feel privileged to do it.
I got a sense that if we weren't paying you, you'd still do it, right?
I do love my job, but I don't.
But you'll have to pay as well.
I got 1 year left of my mortgage, so I gotta pay for 1 more year.
So in rounding this up before Councillor Jones offers a real summary, Mine would be there are no insurmountable challenges that we've heard about today. If we really, really want to, for this generation of young people, and for the generation that follow them, and for the generation that follows that, you know, I think we've got 203 young people in our care at the moment. 202? 200. 200.
Yeah.
Well, you know, only 6 months ago it was about 173. You know, so it's a dynamic situation. That's a lot of young people, isn't it? But it's not too many that we can't know their names. It just isn't. We could put all 200 in this room comfortably. So I come back to what my comment to you a few moments ago. Has this been powerful enough for it to stay with you in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months? If it has, none of the challenges are insurmountable, and there are some short-term things that we can do to help, and we will. So thanks ever so much for your time.
Thank you.
I'll pass to Penny Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know really where to begin. Well, it began one night when we were all asked, those of us who are part of the panel were asked to leave the room, and we thought we'd have a short little time outside, a quick cup of tea perhaps, whilst you inside, all the young care leavers, started to get together and work out what they really wanted. 1 hour later, when we were twiddling our thumbs, we went in very kind of cowed almost, but we were absolutely mesmerised by what they'd brought up, and we were so pleased with the effort that they had made to tell us exactly what was bothering them. You've heard today those 9 statements, and I just want to tell you and reassure everybody in this chamber, we didn't just listen to those 9 statements and then walk out and, oh, well, we've done that, tick that box out. It doesn't work like that. We are addressing each of those at all times. But Councillor Breakborough mentioned this. Everything, welcome to our world. Everything is slow. I mean, super slow. And some of this is not up to us. It's not up to Monmouthshire. It has to go further. It has to go to Welsh Government. And I attend lots of meetings in Cardiff to do with foster. I was there this morning dealing with something like this. And we have to, all the local authorities, because there are a lot of caring authorities in Wales, we try and address these issues. We bring up your points, and that's where it really helps. We've got evidence that we can produce. But it takes time for change to occur. But it is in the pipeline. And I'd just like to tell you a couple of things. For instance, corporate parenting. It's a name that's across Wales. And we can't just change it. We can change it within ourselves. Our panel could be called something else as long as everybody was aware of what it was. But the actual name, but it is being addressed by Sally Holland, the Children's Commissioner. She knows what you feel. She knows that lots of people do. So it is in the pipeline that a major change is coming. You know, you submit your ideas and things. So that's one thing. But with us, yes, we can do it. When we next meet, we can talk about the actual name. You'll have to have a name that we can, you know, use as a subheading. The times of the meetings, yes, it's so easy to say, right, have it in the evenings, why don't you? Because we have foster carers who are an integral part of our panel, and they prefer to come in the day. So we have to address both issues. We are hoping now, as you say, to do alternate. We're getting into another pattern. And after our next meeting, we will have put forward a series of dates. This morning I was at Welsh Government, and we had a presentation from the National Fostering Federation, and they're in the middle of change, and they want to make sure that we all work in the same way. But in fact, I think we're a bit more advanced, as perhaps is Pembrokeshire and some other authorities. But one of the things that's brought up is they're going to have training, and they're going to have a national training programme which will go for all foster carers, so that they are all on the same level playing field. We start off, and one part of the training was how to teach skills for the transition period of leaving home and going into the workplace or living by yourself. So that is being addressed. They will have to attend these training programs. And what was brought up was, well, how can we emphasise that they need to address the problem of 18 to 25? Now, yes, there is a financial implication, but you know, that comes from probably above the address, but we can still perhaps work on that ourselves. Some are really good, but Mike, you told us a tale once where not long ago you went to collect, you got a call from a foster carer and who said, I can't have him anymore, he's 18 or whatever, and you went, and what was on the doorstep?
His bags.
Black paper,
Yeah.
black bags full of his stuff. And, you know, how can anyone be as cruel as that? So we need to make sure that we have the right foster carers in place as well. So we're working on that. Adverts, yeah, that was quite a mute point, but we'll have to talk about that, I think, again. Apprenticeships, training. Interestingly, we had a talk from Dr. Sarah Aitken, who's Public Health Officer, the other day at a seminar, and one of the suggestions that, to help us go forward with healthy living in Gwent was to have more nurseries. This has nothing to do with looked after children at the moment, but it's just teaching people at the start to work well. So those nurseries. So then we kind of had a bit of an idea, well, if we have lots more nurseries that we actually put into place, couldn't we have more nursery assistants? Couldn't we have more work placements for our looked after children? And that she's gone away and she's going to try and implement that. Again, won't be done straight away, but it was an idea that came from a seminar and hopefully it'll go forward because I know lots of people like to work with young children, male and female. So, you know, she went away and is going to work on that. Access to care, well, we'll talk about, you know, the CAMs. I know that they're working very hard and I know that they're under a lot of pressure. The sport and leisure we've talked about. I'm very sorry, but I think we all thought that had gone through. Accommodation, I certainly will. I'm a member of the Regional Partnership Board and we will be taking that, I'll be taking that to there. But I also work quite a lot with the Newport Social Services. So I'll ask them in particular why we can't do that transition, why we can't go across border. Okay, and we'll come back with something at the next meeting. Social isolation is a problem. And I know that Mike, you and others go well beyond, above and beyond your duties. On Christmas Day, for instance, I know what you do. You don't have to do that. But you go out and about, make sure everybody's all right. Or you put them together. You put people together so that nobody is isolated. It doesn't help when you go home at night and, you know, you've just got the telly and things like that. But if we address this housing problem, then, you know, perhaps we could have, what did you call it, Paul? Shared living. Rather than, we don't want a hostel, we don't want anything institutionalised, but kind of shared living. Be an excellent idea. So we're working on that. What else was I going to say? Yes, I'd just like to address the members for a second. Yes, we have enough people on our panel because any bigger, it's a very large, diverse group. We have lots of outside bodies as well. And any bigger, perhaps it wouldn't be as useful. However, we have representation from each party, but they're not always turning up. And really, we just have two main parties who attend. I'm sending out a plea now that if you aren't interested in attending, then please could we put somebody else in your place. It is important that all parties are represented because it is all of our responsibilities. And my last thing I just want to say is, apart from thank you, is do you want another evening before Christmas? Would that be? Well, you'd have to put in a request at what time? Yes, of course there would be. So probably, Mike, what would you think that could be organised?
Oh, yeah.
No okay, well, we'll have an evening before Christmas. Then we can have this feedback. But I'd just like to thank you very much. You were superb, really were, and
Well
you've
done,
done us proud. And you, Mike.
Can I just say quickly,
Yes.
thank you very much for listening to us all. I'd also like to say that amongst all of the moaning, actually, both of us are incredibly privileged to be supported by amazing people who go above and beyond. And we would not actually, care leavers would just be completely, I think we'd all just, I can't think of a word, if we didn't receive the support we have. So that's a massive thank you to Leaving Creative for that. And the other thing is, I don't know who this goes to, but it's really lovely to listen to all these things potentially do. But actually, I'd like to know, and I understand that it takes time and that's fine, but I'd like to see receive evidence of when it's done or evidence of what's happening, because for me that's really useful to know that I've spoken to you and then something's happening. And I'm happy to be patient about it, but I would like to perhaps be involved in conversations or emails, or, you know, and I'll go to any meetings. I'd just like to be involved.
Can I come back on that, Chair? Right, in our corporate parenting panels, we actually have minutes obviously taken and the secretary doing it, and we have an action plan at the end of each, and we put a date on it and we we look at it next time to make sure. But when you came last time, it was really an opening gambit. We hadn't done it before, and it was more informal. I think this time I know somebody kind of took minutes, but it wasn't. This time we'll do it properly and have an action plan, so you've got the dates, so you've got the times, and then we can see and we can talk it through.
Yeah, and it's appropriate to actually send it to us as caregivers.
Yes,
I know
I agree.
Sent to us for
I agree.
workers,
Yeah.
but actually we're adults. We're involving ourselves through our own thing. It's not appropriate to send it to our care workers.
No,
and
so
then
it'll have.
receive it. We'd like to receive it as.
That's a good idea. That's an excellent idea. Okay, well done. But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Penny. Thank you very much.
You said it would be enlightening, Councillor Jones, and you're absolutely right. Once again, our grateful thanks. Thank you, officers. Right. Well, thank you, members, for that. Very, very helpful contributions from everybody. So we're now on nearly at the end of the agenda, actually, because the notice of motion at number 8 has been withdrawn. And the members' question at 9 has been deferred to the next meeting in December. So item 10 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of September.
Move.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Oh, Councillor Webb, sorry, I thought you agree in the minutes. Right, one abstention. Thank you. 2 abstentions. Any more? Everybody else in favour of accepting the minutes? Okay. Oh, no, you weren't here, Councillor Williams, were you? No. I think we'll just say that the members who were present at that meeting approved the minutes. Yeah. Okay, thank you. And thank you all once again for your contributions this afternoon. A very good meeting. Thank you.
to your kids.